Hi everyone, this is Ixwa. This is going to be a much shorter version of my modding guide, especially the two videos that are already out. I'm just cleaning it up a bit so it isn't as long to watch. This guide does assume that you already have Notepad++ installed, so if you don't already have that, go online, install it, because this entire guide will be based around that. Without further ado, you'll see that I've already navigated to my user drive and into saved games reassembly. So that's C, your username, saved games, reassembly. And if you don't already have a mods folder, go ahead and make one, all lowercase. Then you can double click on that, and here are where your mods are going to be. I'm going to create a new folder where our new mod is going to be, and you can call this whatever you want. I'm just going to call it Z a bunch of times so that it shows up at the end here. Then we can double click on this, create a new text document. You didn't see me do that because I have OBS set to capture just this window, but I right clicked here and there's like a drop down menu and says new, and then you can click on text document at the bottom there. We are going to rename this whole thing to just blocks.lua. And there will be a pop-up. If you change a file name extension, the file might become unusable. Are you sure you want to change it? Go ahead and hit yes, and this will actually automatically change this to a Lua file, which we can now right-click on, hit open with, and open it in Notepad++. Okay, this is our blocks.lua file. As you can see, it opens up in here, and as you work on more mods and more files, they will show up in this taskbar over here, but we don't have to worry about that for now. First thing you want to do as you start any mod is just put an opening and closing bracket. All of the code for your blocks is going to go in here, and I like to throw down a bunch of indents at the bottom here so I can have some scrolling freedom if I want to. This is going to be the baseline for your mod. So everything you put in blocks.lua is either going to be included here or physically put in here. And I will talk a bit more about includes at the very end of this video. To make things quicker, I've already created a template block here for our hull. And you can notice that currently the save icon over here is red. So if I hit Control S, that'll actually turn blue, and that's when you know your stuff is saved. Without further ado, first things first, you want to have brackets here, and you can see when I click on it, it highlights in red. So that way, if I ever accidentally add another bracket, you can see like, oh boy, this one's connecting to this one. That shouldn't be happening. I can delete that, and you'd know what's the problem with your brackets. Second thing is your ID here. ID relocation range, I'm not entirely sure what it goes from. Maybe someone in the comments will post it. But I do know that 20,000 to 29,000 is super safe and totally acceptable, and I almost always use that for my mods, so 20,000 to 29,000 is okay. Nice thing about relocation range is once you upload it to the Steam Workshop, it'll just automatically regenerate it to a different number, so you don't have to worry about it conflicting with other mods. Same thing with the group. I almost always go between 20 and 29, although I do know that it probably goes up to like 60, maybe 50. If you're getting an error, just make it lower or higher depending on how low or high you are, I guess, but 20 through 29 is safe. Name, not much to say about this. It's just the name of the block that shows up in campaign mode. Same thing about the blurb, that's just the description that shows up in campaign. For the shape, I'm going to link the list of vanilla shapes in the description below if you want to look at that. Another thing is I will make another video covering custom shapes because the last one was a bit lacking, so look forward for that. But for now, this is just going to be a default square. Scale, for most of these, goes between 1 and 10, but I'm just going to stick with scale 1 square because that's easy. Scale 1 square is just your default Terran, and do note that default Terran means 10 reassembly units by 10 reassembly units. So a scale 1 square is 10 long, and that's going to be very important for most applications in reassembly concerning like range and speed and stuff. Durability, And density is something you multiply the area of your block by to get the actual health and mass value. So this block is a scale 1 square, 10 by 10 is 100 area. 100 area times 2.5 gives you 250 health, and 100 area times 0.1 density gives you 10 mass. Same thing if our square had like 50 area, if this wasn't a square, if it was like some weird half circle or like half square or something and it had 50 area, multiply that by 2.5 and you get 125 mass, or multiply that by 0.1, 125 health, and multiply that by 0.1 to get 5 mass. This is the default Terran values, by the way. Growth rate is kind of the opposite. Instead of multiplying, you divide. So our 10 by 10 square, 100 area, divided by 20 gets 5 seconds regeneration. If you make this higher, so like 100 divided by 100 gives you 1 second regeneration. Just keep that in mind. Terran is 20. 20 is usually pretty good. If you're going to make higher health blocks, I'd recommend lower growth rate. And there are some pretty interesting gimmicky factions with high growth rates, but usually 30 is the highest I've seen it go. Points, if you want your block to be free, make it -1. If you want the computer to decide, which I don't know why you would, because the computer is almost always wrong, make 0. And other than that, you can type in actual point values. So if I type in 1,000, this block will be 1,000 points in the campaign. That's P. I'm just going to make it free because it's a whole block. Your 2 fill colors are the colors of the block. So if you've ever noticed how like a lot of the vanilla blocks kind of shift between 2 colors, that's where you do that here. This one is red and green, and this red has an alpha value in front of it. So this goes between 0 and FF, where 0 is completely transparent and FF is completely opaque. 80 is about in the middle there. I think it might actually be 50% on the dot, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So this is clear-ish. And then this is obviously just a hex value for red, hex value for green. This one is the line color. It's just the color of the lines on the block, and I just made that black. Line color cannot have opacity, so keep that in mind when you're making a line color. You can put it there, but it's not actually going to do anything unless you're working with shrouds, but that's a later video. Finally, you've got your features. For blocks, I almost always put palette on everything, just because that way you don't have to worry about putting it on a ship. Just for clarification, if you do not put a block on a ship and you do not put features equals palette on it, it will not show up in the campaign. So this is just a foolproof way to make every single block you have show up in the campaign. And then this is optional, but I like having it. Sort is just a way to sort your blocks. So if I make 3 blocks with a sort of 1, and then another one with a sort of 2, and another one with a sort of 3, the sort 1 is always going to show up before the sort 2, and the sort 2 is always going to show up before the sort 3. Same, even if I order it, so even if I like put the sort 3 in the code up here, and the sort 2 here, and the sort 1 here, in campaign mode, it's still going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put this at 10 for now, just because that's a good starting point for my whole blocks, and then I'm going to save this. Control S. Now before we open Reassembly, I'm just going to put another Y here just so it's a typo, and that way we can see what an error in Reassembly looks like. We've opened up Reassembly, and the first thing we're going to do is just go up into our mods folder, or into the mods button over here. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. In case you didn't already know, whenever you subscribe to a mod or make a new mod, it's going to show up at the very bottom, and you can drag this around as you want. I'm just going to keep it down here for now because it doesn't really matter that much. We're going to hit view 3 errors, and you're actually going to see that it tells us the line on which our error occurs and where the error happens. So here's our durability with 2 Ys. It's throwing an error because the game doesn't know what that is. So we need to fix this, and then we're going to be able to see our block in game. One thing to note is this does not refresh if you reload the game. So you have to actually completely restart it. You can't reload the game in-game for it to reload the mod log. Kind of sucks, but just know if you are doing mod troubleshooting and you're looking at the error, you need to restart the game every time you make a change. Otherwise, it's just going to add stuff to this list and it's going to get very confusing as to what is where. I'm going to fix that off screen and then I'll be right back and we can look at our block. Right, just to show you that the error has gone away, we can scroll down here and there isn't a view errors bar anymore, so we know that our mod is completely fine and we can go into Sandbox and look at our block. I will make a Sandbox tutorial in a bit, but for now the only thing you need to know is CL to clear the entire screen, and then MINP space and then your faction ID. So in our case that was 20, or in my case that was 20. And then you hit enter and our single block spawns. And as you can see, it's oscillating between an opaque green and a transparent red. So you can kind of see the stars behind it right there. There aren't many stars in Sandbox, but as it turns to green, the stars are completely gone because it's opaque. Now I'm going to show you guys how you can add more blocks to your palette. And without further ado, we don't even need to close reassembly actually, because there is another command called the rel command, which reloads everything in the game. And we will use that in just a second to reload our mod and spawn in the blocks that we add. Now, because we are writing in actual code, making new blocks is super easy. All you have to do is hit an open bracket, type in the new ID, so we're going to go with 20,001 because this has to be different than this one. And then we're going to put comma extends equals, and then we're going to put this ID, so 20,000, because we are extending off this block, or we are copying this block. And if I just put a parentheses here, this is going to be the exact same block as here. We've duplicated the block. But to make things a bit more interesting, I'm also going to change the shape, or sorry, the scale. So we can put scale equals 2. And now you have a quick and easy way of making a bunch of scales. Oops. So if I can figure out where my arrow keys are, we can make scale 3, 4, 5, and 6 Terran blocks. Terran blocks. They're going to be a bit differently colored, but yeah. And then we can also go so far as say we can make another extends with an ID of 10. And this time, instead of scale, we're going to change it to shape equals, and let's just make this rect. I think a rect is a shape that exists. Yeah. Actually, let's make this a sensor because sensors are funny. And then we can extend off of this block. So that's pretty nifty. You can extend off of a block that's been extended. So if we make this 11 and extend it off of this, this is now going off of this block, which is going off of this block. You can kind of see when I highlight it, other ones show up. So now we can add a few more scales of a sensor block. Make sure to fix your IDs. I have had so many issues where I've just forgotten to fix the IDs of a faction I was making. And all of these, do notice that they are extending off of this block. I'm just changing the scale. So it's this block. And it wouldn't be incorrect to make this a 1, 2, 3, so that this block extends off of this one and extends off of this one. But it's just a lot easier to make this all extend off of the same one. That way, if you ever change this to a different shape, these ones all get updated with it. One thing to note, that when you are making these blocks, actually I'll show this now. So now if we want to make a different set of blocks, let's say we want blocks that are just red, we can change the color here and change the ID to 100. I like giving myself 100 space to work with blocks. That way, if I ever have a ton of scales of squares, if you ever played like Chalice or Antecedents, you know that I have, I think, 20 some scales of squares so that it scales really nicely. And then I also have the Arcus triangles, and that's mirrored and it has a bunch of different scales. So Arcus and square takes up a lot of space, but I like giving myself 100. It gives a lot of empty space. You can see here that I gave myself some space between 5 and 10. And now, if you hold the Alt key on your keyboard, and click and hold and drag, you can select a column. So we're going to just change this 0 to a 1 and change this 0 to a 1. Same thing here, same thing here. And now we have all of these blocks, which are hull 1, and it's going to be green, red, and it's going to have 6 scales of square and 5 scales of sensor. For this one, we can call this hull 2, and it's going to have 5 scales of square. And let's make this a right triangle with 4 scales. And then we can also very quickly make this a 2-scale right triangle and a 2-scale left triangle. And you can see that I very quickly just updated this to using that Alt key. And now we can save this and go back into Reassembly and reload it, and you will see that all of our stuff is there. So obviously we haven't reloaded anything yet. If I load in a min-p20 again, it's just going to be our same block. But now if I hit reload or rel, hit enter, then min-p20, you can see that I got my green square that scales 6 scales. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and do note this is 60 reassembly units now. This sensor that has a few scales, I forgot how many now. This block that only has 5 scales, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it only has 3 ports for some reason. And then we have our triangle. Now, because I loaded in a min palette, min-p, and not just pal20, you can see that I only got the first scale. So easy way to condense palettes like my mod antecedents, if I type in min-p29, you can see that I only have 1 block show up of each thing. And with bigger mods, with bigger palettes, if I load in like pal29, you can see that very quickly the amount of squares and the amount of triangles becomes nightmarishly big. Especially with like Chad lines, it looks kind of duplicate because I added lines to the edge here, and then all of these Arcus triangles. This is not good to work with. So I like using just min-p, and that'll show me just these blocks. And then cool thing with min-p is it doesn't show mirrors. So we can scale through our block here, mirror it, and this is the left triangle now. And kind of scale through these ones. This is a quick bonus at the end of the video. I'm just going to show you how includes works. So I'm just going to make a new folder in here. We're going to call this blocks, or block, I guess. And you can call this whatever you want. But in here, we're going to create a new text document and call this one, let's just say hull.lua. Make sure to hit yes when it asks you if you change the file extension name. And now we can open this in Notepad++. So again, right click, edit with Notepad++, and it opens in Notepad++. Now you can see that we've got our 2 things over here. And to make this show up in our palette, if we go into here and type #include and then space and open quote, and now you just go back to the folder. I called mine block, and then slash, and then hull.lua, and then close quote. Anything in here is now going to be part of this. And the cool thing is you don't need opening brackets here. This is inside of these opening brackets. So what you can do now is if I decide to make another block over here, which just looks like this, and I can hit Shift-Tab to unindent this. And let's say we make this green because we have a red block and we have a red-green block, and now we have a green block. Let's make this 300. Now we can save this, and when we open up Reassembly, this block will actually show up with these ones. So I'll show you that really quickly. Again, we want to clear first, CL, REL to reload everything, and then min-p20. And our cursor was all the way over here, so Here's our new green block, and you can see over here that I'll move it down away. It's hull free, it's got the group 20, and it's got the ID 2300, which is what we gave it. So this one's just the green one, these ones are just the red ones, and these ones are the red-green ones that kind of shift between the colors. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.